Hallie, a couple things to note. That first of all, that statement was put together rather hastily. I know you guys got late word it was happening, but also the president seemed to measure his words very carefully. Didn't take questions, and his level of threats or warnings toward Iran seemed to be somewhat tempered. Did you pick up on any of that?
For sure, Lester. And he also talked about how the United States policy and position is not regime change in Iran, which was clearly intended to be a signal to the Iranians here. Lester, this was an unexpected on-camera appearance from President Trump, but one that was perhaps inevitable given the news over the last 18 or 24 hours or so. I've been talking with sources close to the president in and around the White House as he is down here in South Florida for that holiday break. They tell me that the president was making calls to his friends, to his political allies this morning, making the same defense you just heard him lay out to the American people of why this strike happened. I'm told the president is feeling resolved, confident in his decision, no hesitation, no regrets, that this was the right move for him to make, despite some of the fallout you were already seeing overseas and the fallout here at home as well. Because what's happening now politically, the president is facing serious criticism from members of Congress for not notifying certain key members of Congress, certain key Democrats and Republicans in advance of the strike, and for not seeking congressional authorization as well. I'm told the president has no concerns about the authorization piece of it, that they feel like, the White House feels like they are on solid footing and solid ground with carrying out this strike. The question now that the president will have to answer, and you're right, he did not take questions, Lester, which was different when you and I spoke the night that the president, or the day the president announced the death of another highly wanted terrorist, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. He took questions from reporters then for 20, 30 minutes, getting into extraordinary detail about the strike, the raid in that instance. You did not see this now, and that appeared to be an intentional choice from the president and from the White House. But here's the question he will have to answer. What is the strategy now moving forward when Iran, and it is almost certainly when Iran retaliates, not if Iran retaliates? I'm told by my sources that the White House and the administration have been prepping responses in the event that that happens, Lester.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.